Hello, I'm Dr. Roper from The Right Place. Today we are talking about APA, MLA, and ASA documentation, and we're going to go through these slides together. So when we talk about documentation, what we're really talking about is a particular style for sharing where the sources that we've used in our paper come from. And the first one that we will go through together is APA documentation. So first of all, let's talk about the research paper versus the research proposal. If we're talking about a research proposal, often for classes, a professor may ask his or her students to share the reasoning behind their pursuing a particular topic for their research paper. So in a research proposal, you're basically presenting an outline of the research that you are proposing to do in the actual paper. You want to summarize the information that you will discuss in your project, and this is giving you want to put together a proposal once you are at the beginning stages of your research process, and you're going to include in your proposal what you anticipate will happen. If it's an empirical study, you will provide your hypothesis for what you think the study will prove or show. So you want to think in terms of a proposal as making an argument or making a case for the research that will be done based on what you know about the subject thus far. The research proposal will include a title, an introduction, a hypothesis, the methods, and references. But the particular style and format of your research proposal will be dependent upon what type of project you're doing and what the expectations are of the professor who is assigned that proposal. But in general, the idea is to basically, like I said, make a case for the research that you intend to do and identify the problem that you are making an attempt to solve through that research. The research paper itself is a presentation of the ideas that you have proposed in response to information that you found in your sources or through the study that you have conducted. The research paper allows you to make informed judgments and original interpretations. So the research paper is not meant to be a collection of all the things that others have done and said, but rather your interpretation of those things for a particular purpose. You want to provide detailed information of the previous research that has been done. That is called a literature review. And the purpose of a literature review is to sort of compare and contrast all those different studies that have been done or all the different perspectives that have been presented prior to you doing this particular work. It is not only the informed summary of the topic by primary and secondary sources, but it is a genre that requires investigating sources to offer interpretations of the text. So as I said, the interpretation of what has been done is really important. Of course, the research paper comes after the proposal. It is a report of the research that you have completed and the conclusions that you have come to as a result. The research paper includes a title page, an abstract, an introduction, methods, results, discussions, references cited, figures, tables, and appendices. So we're going to look at some of the basics of APA documentation. APA documentation. An APA paper, first of all, has 1-inch margins, double spaced throughout, 12-point font. You want to indent the first line of each paragraph, and every page of your essay should have the page number in the upper right corner. APA papers also have a title page. Now, there is a new APA that has recently come out, and it distinguishes between the title page characteristics for a student paper versus a professional paper. But we're going to assume that the papers you are writing are student papers, so this is what they should look like. You'd have the title of your paper, the name of the author or authors, the affiliation for each author, the course number and name for which the paper is being written, the course instructor name and title, and the assignment's due date written in the format common in your country. So as you see here, March 30th, 2020 would be typical. This all should be centered as you see here, and no abbreviations or unnecessary words. Now in the body of your paper, there's a particular way to organize headings, and I want to make sure that we're clear when we are organizing our paper with various headings, whether it's level 1, level 2, level 3, or level 4. These distinctions have everything to do with the content of the paper. The level 1 headings are those that will be pretty much standard in the paper. You will always need to have a method section and a results section and the other standard sections that are expected in an APA formatted paper. But the next level underneath each of those excuse me, will be determined by what it is that you're exploring and to what level of detail you need to go. So if under your methods you simply describe the site of the study, then you will only have a level 2 heading. And the level 2 heading is formatted the way you see here, with the flush left boldface title case heading, and it starts a new paragraph. Now, if you need to go into further delineation of the site or of the participants, as you see in this example, now we're talking about who the participants are, and we're going to talk more about who they are and what their characteristics are. So we're going to take it to another level, in this case, level 3, and so it would be formatted flush left, boldface, italic, title case heading, as they have demonstrated here, and it would start a new paragraph. So this is particular to the extent to which they're going deeper into the discussion of participant population, for example. If there wasn't a need to delineate the particular members of that population, then there would only be a level 2 in this paragraph, and so on. So you see under this next example where there's a need under spatial ability, which is a level 2 heading, for there to be some description of each of the tests, which make up level 3 in this case. So they have decided to talk more about test 1, which means that they need to go all the way down to a level 4 heading in order to talk about teachers with experience versus teachers in training versus graduate teaching assistants. This is the example that we have. So for this level, if you were to go that far into it, depending again on what your topic is and how much information is needed, these headings then do not begin a new paragraph, but teachers with experience is simply indented, boldface, title case, and ending with a period, and then it continues with the paragraph from there. So I'm actually going to come out of the presentation for a minute to give you a sense of what that might look like. So here's an example of what I mean. Now, obviously the content is gibberish here, but I'm showing the level 1 heading, which would be the methods, and there's just the method section. Then the site of the study in this example would be a level 2 heading, which is why it is off to the side. And then we have the level 3 and level 4, which come under, so under participant population, we have the teachers and students, as I mentioned before. And then under spatial ability, notice that results is the level 1 heading, then we have spatial ability as the level 2, and then we have a description of each of the tests. That's test 1 and test 2. But underneath test 1, you see that we have indented these 3 sections here. This is the level 4 example that I was showing you before, where the teachers with experience is the level 4 heading, but it is simply bolded and italicized, and then the description of the teachers with experience follows from that in the same paragraph without starting a new paragraph. And then here's another example of that, level 4, and this is level 4 also, because all of these are talking about what was included in test 1. So as you can see, what determines the categories or the levels that you use in your paper have less to do with the format and more to do with the content of your paper. What is it that you're trying to explain and show, and how does it fit with what you have already shared. All right, so let's go back. That was the headings. Now we're going to talk about in-text citations. When you're doing in-text citations in APA format, the primary way that you cite your sources is with the author's last name and the year. And here are some examples of how you would do that. Notice that if you mention the author in the sentence, then only the year would be in parentheses. Here's an example of a paraphrase where the author is not mentioned. So the authors are listed in the parentheses with the year of publication. In this example, according to Burnett, the author is mentioned in the sentence itself, and so the year of publication is included just after that mention. And in this example, this is a quote directly from the particular source, and you can tell that it's a quote because of the quotation marks, which indicate that the exact words have been repeated. And then in parentheses, we have the author's last name, the year of publication, as well as the page number. When citing an electronic document, whenever possible, cite it in the author date style. If electronic source lacks page numbers, locate and identify paragraph numbers or the paragraph heading. So here's an example of what that might look like as you see here. According to Jones, and the year of publication is there, and then at the end of the use of that source is an abbreviated title with the paragraph number. Okay, if you are quoting from a source and the quote that you are using is more than 40 words, you will start that quote on a new line, indented ½ inch, and again, you're using the exact language from the original, and then ending it with the page number. But the difference with a block quote is that you would not need the quotation marks. The indentation of that section indicates that all of this is quoted material. So here's a breakdown of what your APA reference page should look like and the parts that you should expect to include on a reference page. Now, the type of source will determine which of these pieces of information are relevant to what you are citing. But in general, this is the format that it should follow, and this is the order in which these things should appear. So first should be your author, then your year of publication, then the title of the work, the publication name, the volume number, publication date, page numbers, and DOI, whichever of these things is relevant depending on the type of source that you have. If there's any piece of these, if there's any items in this series that is not relevant to the type of source that you have or you do not have, then you just go on to the next thing that you do have and include that in your citation. So here's an example of what that would look like. You would begin with the author's last name, the year of publication. This is the title of the work. This is the title of the publication. So the work that is within the text, that's the difference between the title of the work and the publication name. And then the publication information, that is when this particular document, whether it's a book, a magazine, a journal, a website, was published, and what volume or number this particular publication is. And then how to locate it. In this case, we have the DOI, or there would be a URL that would go here. Each entry in the reference page is made up of the core elements in a specific order. Again, you want to double space everything, flush left the first line of the entry, and indent subsequent lines. So that's only if each entry carries over beyond the first line would you need to indent? If you have a short citation, it only takes up one line, then there is no need to force the hanging indent. It will just be on one line. And then, of course, all entries are alphabetically ordered by the surname of the first author of each work. And here's an example. It's important to note that the reference that you list on this reference page must also be cited in the body of the paper. If it is not in the body of the paper, then it should not appear on the reference page. So that is the basics of APA documentation. Now we'll talk a little bit about MLA. Very similar. You would double space everything in MLA as you do in APA, 12-point font. The difference with MLA, though, is that there is no title page. You want to leave one space after punctuation, set all margins to 1 inch, indent the first line of paragraphs by ½ inch, and you would have a header at the top of each page, which includes the author's last name and the page number. So here's an example of an MLA page. Notice the heading at the top with the student's name first, the teacher's name follows, the course number, and the date in the left column. Notice that this is not a header, because if it were in the header, it would appear on every page. And this that you see here at the top left should only be on the first page of the document. Every other page would only have the author's last name and page number in the top right corner. That one you can put in the header so that it appears on every page that follows. The title is centered at the top. Again, everything is double spaced. That means no extra spaces between paragraphs. So MLA allows for headings and subheadings, as we described earlier, and they are formatted in a particular way. A little different from the APA format, but similar. And as you can see here are the examples of how each level would be formatted depending on how many levels you need in your particular paper. So we know that an in-text citation is a brief reference of the source in the body of the paper. It should direct readers to the entry in your works cited list for that source. It should also be unobtrusive, provide the citation information without interrupting your own text. Generally, author's last name or an abbreviated title would be in the in-text citation, followed by a page number and in parentheses. Here are some examples of MLA documentation. For MLA, you'll notice that it's the author's last name and page number, unlike APA, which is the author's last name and the year of publication. So for MLA, you might mention the author in the sentence and then put the page number in parentheses. Notice also that the end text citation follows the quotation marks, and then the end punctuation for the sentence follows that parenthetical. If the author is not mentioned in the sentence, then the parenthetical would include the author's name and page number, but again, the punctuation follows the parenthetical. And then an example of a block quote is here. Similar to APA, when you have a long quote, you would indent by ½ inch and not utilize the quotation marks. And here's an example of that. For MLA, you use block quotations when the quoted text runs longer than 4 lines. In APA, it was if your quotation is 40 words or more. Here's the breakdown of the MLA works cited page. Again, similar to APA, but with some slight differences, particularly being that the year of publication comes later in the citation than it does in APA. For MLA, we begin with the author's last name, the title of the source, and the title of the container, similar to what we talked about before. Then any other contributors are listed afterwards. The version number, version, and issue number follow that, and then the publication date after the publisher. And the location, it comes after that. Here's an example of an MLA works cited page entry. And here is an example of an MLA works cited page. MLA utilizes the hanging indent as well. As you can see here, the first line of each entry is flush left margin. And then when the entry extends beyond that first line, the second and subsequent lines are indented by ½ inch. And it is alphabetical order. So ASA is our final documentation style that we will look at. Again, you will see many similarities and overlap between these different styles. The basics of ASA is that you should have a title page, an abstract of no more than 200 words. You would have an appendix, and there can be more than one. Your margins are 1 1/4 inch. Your font is Arial and 12 point. And again, the entire text should be double spaced. So here's an example of an ASA title page. Similar to APA, you would have the running head here, the full title followed by an asterisk, name of the author and institution. ASA, though, requires a complete word count for the document and a title footnote with name and address of authors, acknowledgments, credits, and grant information, if any. If an abstract is needed for your ASA formatted paper, it should be on a separate page immediately after the title page with the title of the document as the heading. So you do not have the title abstract in an ASA paper. In an APA paper, your abstract would be titled abstract. In ASA, your abstract has the title of the document as its heading. The abstract should be one paragraph, 150 to 200 words in length, using accessible language. So you want to think about the abstract as a way to talk about your study or your research to a general audience, to engage them or entice them to want to read more. You would also include at the bottom of your abstract page keywords, 3 to 5 keywords that would help to identify the main themes in your manuscript. So for ASA headings, the page header goes inside the top margin, a ½ inch above the text, next to the left margin. You have a running head, which is a shortened version of the paper's full title, and it should be written in all capital letters. Page numbers start in the header of the first page with the Arabic number 1 and should be flush left. Running head and page numbers should be on every page. Also, don't begin the manuscript with a heading such as introduction. Again, the title of the paper is what you use as your heading. Use subheadings to organize the body. The number of subheadings will be determined by the information that is in your document. As we have spoken about before, first level headings for ASA would be in all caps and aligned to the left margin. Second level heading is presented in heading caps and italics aligned with the left margin. And third level heading is in sentence caps and italicized, indented and inserted before paragraph. ASA also utilizes footnotes or endnotes. These are ways to cite information in addition to what is in the body of the text, to expand on what is already being presented. Footnotes are placed at the bottom of the page on which the material being referenced appears. If using endnotes, at the end of the paper in a separate section, following the references, that's where the endnotes would be located. You want to type the endnotes in numerical order, double-spaced, as a separate section with the title notes or endnotes. Also, you wouldn't use footnotes and endnotes. It's better to use one or the other. Endnotes are used more frequently than footnotes, but both should be used sparingly. As a general rule, use one or the other, as I mentioned already. The exception to this rule is to use a footnote on the title page and for tables, but use endnotes throughout the rest of the document for manuscripts being submitted to a sociology journal. Also, they should be limited to fewer than 100 words. To do a footnote or endnote, you want to begin each note with the same superscripted number that is used in the text. And here's an example of what that might look like. For ASA in-text citations, you want to cite the last name of the author and the year of publication, so it's similar to APA in that regard. Include page numbers within the citation when directly quoting the author's words, paraphrasing a passage, or referring to specific passages. If the author's name is used in the text, put the date in parentheses immediately afterwards. So here's an example: when Duncan, 1959, studied blah, blah, blah. If the author's name is not in the text, enclose the last name and year in parentheses. So you'll see some overlap with APA in this regard. And then for three authors, give all last names in the first citation, but each citation that follows the first mention is you use the abbreviation with the first author's last name and the abbreviation et al, rather than repeating all of the names of the multiple authors each time. Short quotations in the body of the manuscript should always be in quotation marks. Block quotations should be offset from the main text and may be single-spaced. Block quotes do not require quotation marks. So notice that block quotations for ASA are single-spaced, whereas for APA and MLA, everything is double-spaced, including the block quotations. Page numbers follow the year of publication after a colon. So this is the way we would style the citation after the mention of this particular text, the year and the page number separated by a colon. For the ASA reference page, you would center the title references at the top. All references should be in alphabetical order by author's last name. Include first names for all authors, no initials. Each reference should have a hanging indent. And if no date is available, use ND in place of the date. So again, very similar to what we've already looked at with APA and MLA. And what I have included here at the end is a link to the MLA handbook, 8th edition, and the APA publication manual for further information about how to cite these sources using these particular styles. This has just been an overview and the basics, and we certainly welcome you to send us an email, the Writing Center AAMU@gmail.com, if you have questions or need assistance with your research project. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next time.